Play work since probably 1983. Started doing play work in Sheffield when I worked for Sheffield Church's community programme agency. And then I came to work at Forest Fields Play Centre in 1987 as a frontline play worker, working with Ros Sinclair. There were two of us. We used to have 200 children a day sometimes at Forest Fields, and it was amazing. So my own earliest play memory was I was born in Borwell and lived on Highbury Vale, and we lived in terraced houses, but at the bottom of the street, at the bottom of everybody's street, was a big huge run of allotments that had been abandoned and just left, and so it was absolutely full of rubble. It was full of greenhouses that had been smashed up, potting sheds that had been smashed up, and I was under 6, but a big gang of us used to get on our trundle toys, go down the bottom of the road, and we'd, with a bottle of pop and some sandwiches, and we'd just play on the allotments all day. We made shops, we made little cities, we made homes and houses, and games would just last for the complete day and you'd lose track of time. And we'd build sweetie shops out of make sweets using the broken glass. We'd have mud pies, we'd build roads. We didn't have hardly any toys or tools, but we just made them and we made up the games.
Bits you found at the allotment.
With bits that we found at the allotment, yeah. And that was my earliest play experience, and I think that's a really important informal play experience and shows the power of play for what it does for building your experiences and building your everything, character, everything as a child. So yeah.
And you say that was when you under 6? You're saying so very young.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, I was, because we moved when I was 6,
right.
So I know that
before then.
It was before then, and we were not supervised at all.
That was my next question. So no adults around there.
No adults at all. No, the adults knew that we were down on the allotments.
Yeah.
But we would be gone hours, absolutely hours, 2 and 3 hours, because we were packed off with something to eat. So yeah.
And what decade was that in, Dawn?
So that would have been the early 60s.
Right.
90s. So I was born in 61. So right up until 67, we played like that, and I think a lot of children did. So and if we weren't on the allotments, we were on the streets till it got dark, and all our gardens. Well, we didn't really have gardens. We had yards, and they all ran together at the back of the houses. So there was always people and children outside their homes, and there'd always be lots of informal groups getting together and playing. And
so it was generally people on the street that you played with, your friends?
Yeah.
People who lived on your street?
Yeah, and actually thinking about that as well, because people didn't move away from their homes as much as they did now, it was a mixture of friends and family. So maybe that's what contributed to feeling a bit safer. Not sure that it was safer, but that was the feeling that it was safer.
It felt safe.
Yeah, because everyone would look out for everyone else, and everyone knew where everybody lived, and doors weren't locked, and if anything happened, somebody would just go knock on somebody's door and ask for help, and he was given. So that was really positive play experience. Totally different to moving to the next house, which seemed to be luxury, so it had a front and a back garden, but then that meant that you stayed in your front and back garden and you played in your front and back garden, and so the play experience was a bit different. Though I was lucky because I was at the back of Borwell Hall Park, and again between 6 and 12 or 13 we just used to go on the park all day with sandwiches and build dens and play around the lakes, play in all the spaces that you were not supposed to be playing in.
Do you remember any particular games that you played, or was it more exploring?
There's a lot of making up games, so like playing at shops, playing at schools, playing at going shopping, that kind of thing. Other games was the way you used tools, and we played hopscotch, we played Kirby, Knock-a-Door Run, naughty games.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few tales of naughty games.
Naughty games, all to do with experimenting with risk and adventure, but of course we didn't have any theory behind it then. So
But seeing how far you could push things and seeing what worked and what got you into too much trouble, so you wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. Dipping your toes into a bit of deep play and seeing what happened. Yeah, no, it's good. fantastic.
That's great, and that was in Bulwell as well.
That was in Bulwell, yeah.
Hall.
Yeah, Bulwell Hall.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So up by Norwich Gardens and all the, in the woods and stuff behind there. That was my next play area, if you like.
So can you tell me about when you started at Forest Fields Play Centre, what that was like and how that came about?
Yeah, I was living in Sheffield at the time, and I'd just found Sheffield's Adventure Playgrounds and thought they were the bee's knees. But there was no recruiting going on there. Saw an advert for Forest Fields Play Centre back in Nottingham, where I came from, and answered that. And it was a really gruelling 3-day interview process. There were 22 of us. Pete Siajka, remember Pete Siajka was there?
No.
Rosalind Sinclair. I'm trying to think of a few names. Anyway, there's 20 of us, and we had to. We turned up on the Friday evening, and we were observed for an entire play session playing with the children at Forest Fields Play Centre. Then on the Saturday morning we had a goldfish bowl interview in the play hut, again being observed all the time, and members of the management committee sat around the room and listened to us talk about our answers to different questions about play and community involvement in play and what it meant for children, what it means for communities. Then we went up to the community centre at Sturton Street, and we had like a speed dating interview where we moved around groups of management committees and they asked us individual questions. Then at lunchtime we were all sorted out. Some people were told to go home. There was about seven of us left. We had an individual interview in the afternoon, and they appointed 2 people, and it was myself and Ros. So we were working 40 hours a week, 6 days a week, from about lunchtime till 7 or 8 at night, and all day Saturday, every day in the school holidays. And although there was just the 2 of us, we had a really good bunch of volunteers. We had about 4 people on the equivalent of a youth opportunities scheme who would come in, and we just opened the, well, we didn't just open the doors, we put a lot of work into organising the play activities. So we were open, Tuesday to Friday, all day Saturday, planned everything. We ran camps, we ran trips, and it was just phenomenal. We just have loads and loads of children, and you were never not busy. You were never still. You were always being invited to join games, start games, sort out fights, sort out disputes about toys. We didn't have lots and lots of equipment, but we used to make up loads of stuff. We used Playworks, the scrap store.
I was going to say, did you use the resource centre? Because it was Bullivant Street at the time, wasn't it?
It was at Bullivant Street.
That was quite new, wasn't it, at the time?
It was, and we used to come weekly and fetch loads of stuff in the car, so we'd always have loads of scrap materials and loads of stuff that we kind of just built before we had one decent piece of play equipment, which was the pulley, and kids loved that, but you would take one person for the entire session to keep order on the pulley, to stop children falling shoving each other off the bit where you waited
the launch pad.
The launch pad, yeah. And then
so it sounds really vibrant. So you said what kind of number of children did you say? You said sometimes 200 children a day? 200
children a day, but we had to put a lot of work into the people who lived behind us and in front of us, because the play centre was right in the middle of a series of terrace streets. And whilst everyone was really pleased that there was a play facility in the area for their children to go to, those people who lived really close, for those people it was a bit harder, because there was a lot of noise, and there'd be a lot of noise at turfing out time because the kids never wanted to go home. There was always groups of children on the street waiting for it to open. So we used to do a lot of stuff like bake cakes and take them around to all the neighbours. We used to do a lot of open days to invite people in to see what we were doing, and that always went down really well, and people would be really pleased when you explained about why play was so good for all the children that were there. And generally you could get people on side, and we recruited a lot of volunteers that way, just by going out and knocking on doors and taking the children with us. And it meant that people who, without that introduction, there would have been a generational clash. So older people tended to see younger people as the bane of their lives, but if you'd introduced them together during the activities that we were doing at the play centre, when we weren't there and those people met, they knew each other, so they would talk to each other, so there would be less of a battle between the different generations, and that's good. That's using play to build good community development and kind of get your message across about how it supports children, families, communities. So that worked really, really well. It was really busy, really frantic. We used to do all kinds of things. The play schemes were amazing. We'd give children budgets and let them organise days within the play scheme so that they understood how to take responsibility and what things cost, and but it wasn't boring, and they still do it really fun. We used to theme lots of things. I remember one half-term play scheme, we based the whole thing on Michael Jackson's Thriller, so that pictures that. Was that
a child's idea then?
It was a child's idea, yeah, they wanted to do it, so and every day we built up different we built up different props, and so by the Friday, everyone was in character all week. Everyone was dressed as zombies all week. We made gravestones out of crisp boxes, painted them, put them out out into the play centre, and then somebody wrote a play. Somebody else had a video camera, and we made our own Thriller video.
Wow.
With about 100 kids in it at Forest Fields Play Centre. It was just brilliant.
I wonder if that still exists somewhere.
Really good. I'll ask Rosalind, because if she'll know where, actually Manjit might know where it exists, or Roy or Sharon. So, yeah, I can ask them. So
sounds fantastic.
Yeah, that's good. And that was 83. Where are we now? To 2018, 19, and that I was just telling Ben that those children from that period still talk on Facebook about their time at Forest Fields Play Centre and all the things that they got up to and all the things that they enjoyed, and how it stood them in good stead for being parents, looking after their own children, understanding how important play is, and still clearly really important for them, because they go back and they're talking to each other about it and about what they did and what it meant.
So it was a big thing for the community, brought the community together, like you said, in terms of different generations and understanding, and those young people. It was obviously an important part in their lives if they're still talking about it on Facebook and still in touch with each other.
And we always made sure generationally that there were people who lived in the community that were on the management committees, and we always made sure that as children got older, because they never really wanted to leave, we had to invent things like junior volunteering and positions of responsibility for them so that they could stay and support other children. Sure. And actually I think there are people in the play and youth service now who are probably either the children of the children who played at Forest Fields.
Yeah.
So, and probably some of the others as well.
So, Forest Fields still exists today, the play centre is still there, in a slightly different format these days, but it's still opening. But back then it was run by not just run by, but set up and run by local people and a voluntary management committee. Can you talk a little bit about that? You said about that you had volunteers, but about the committee at the time?
There was a committee at the time that it had representation on it from Playworks. So the play development people at Playworks all had a playground or a play project that they supported. So, and our play development officer was called Chris Claypole, and her role was to support building and strengthening that committee and our understanding of why that committee was important to running the play centre. And she did that really well. So we had people who lived in the area, but we also had representatives from the other community projects in the area. There's a lot of people who worked voluntarily in and around Forest Fields, and the more they linked together, the stronger it was. So we had a representative from Sturton Street Community Centre, Wiverton Road Community Centre, as far away as New Baseford Community Centre, and they would have places on our management committee. we had a local councillor that supported us, but they didn't always come because they didn't have time. But as workers as well, we set up like a lunchtime forum in the area for anybody who worked in the area that simply wanted to meet other workers in the area, so that they could share information about what the needs of that area were, and then better tailor their, whether it was the school, the community centre, the play centre, you shared information about what was going on in the area and what the area needed and who were the best people to work with. And if you were going to put something on, we did it jointly, and it gave a lot of strength to what was happening, and it also meant that local people really trusted the people who had come in from the outside because to work in areas, because they knew that we all had their best interests at heart, and if anybody was worried about anything, they could come into that forum and say, this is happening on our street, what are you all doing about it? And that worked really, really well. And that's
I guess they got close links to everybody, not just people at the play centre, but other community organisations as well. So
so the social workers, the teachers, even shopkeepers and business leaders, they all would come to that forum, and they would, because if there was ever an issue in the area, it would affect all those people, and we would try and find out a solution that meant that everybody knew that we were trying to build a community solution to problems. And I think that's really important if you in play work, because you can't. It's not an accident that years ago, youth work training was youth and community training, and I grew up being trained as a play worker with a grounding in play development and community development, and I think that's really the strength of it. And I think play starts to get weak if you don't understand how it's located within building communities and bringing resources to your area and supporting local people.
Yeah, it has to be working alongside local people for there to be any longevity or within it, really, and a buy-in from the local community, I guess.
Absolutely, really. So then we had about 12-15 people on that management committee. They didn't all come, and everyone came for different reasons. Some people came because they were lonely, some people came because they really wanted to get some training, some people came because they really wanted to be involved in their children's life after school, some people came because they were looking for work, other people came because they'd got skills they wanted to offer and bring to the play centre, and they thought that was a really good way of getting involved.
So I'd just like to ask, I know you worked at Playworks as well, Dawn. I'd like to ask you about the training, particularly in relation to, we were just talking about community development and the involvement of local people, and I'd like to ask you about how the training fits in with that in terms of skilling people up, etc.
Okay, so I worked at Playworks as the training officer following Wendy Russell, and she'd established a really good route for people involved in play. We offered non-vocational and vocational training opportunities. So we did a Play for All programme that was like lots of different one-day activities, and when you got people excited about play out in the projects, it was often because people maybe hadn't even played themselves, and they really loved doing craft activities or learning about festivals or trying to invent games. And so Play for All were like one day little bite-sized opportunities, and people could come in and work together, meet each other across the city, share experiences, find out what other projects were doing, and you would leave with bags of resources and then bags of ideas that you could then take back and build into your play programmes. And then we started doing training for people who were organising community play schemes, and at that time there was something like 100, because I'd been the play schemes officer and I knew that we were funding upwards of 100 local community play schemes every summer. So Playworks ran a 1 to 3 day training programme for people who were new at organising play schemes, and involved understanding play, but also understanding how to work with other people in your community and build a committee, and the difference between volunteering, doing face-to-face play work, and volunteering as a committee member to apply for grants and manage money and manage play opportunities. We also ran camps and residential training because I think, my first camp was with Forest Fields Play Centre, and it was a bit of a nightmare of an experience because 2 of us went and we had no camp training whatsoever, and we took 20 children away for a week in Derbyshire. I'd never even put up a tent before, didn't understand what camp equipment was like. We were told that 2 blokes would be there who would help us when we got there, but when we got there they'd gone, and they weren't particularly that interested in helping us. So I understand how important play and camps and residentials are, and I didn't want anybody else to have that experience, so we started camp training at Playworks as well, and we'd have 30 or 40 people coming on training and then going back to their local communities and then taking children out into the countryside and doing play outside, and that was really exciting. And then we ran the ABC certificate, introductory certificate in playwork training. It was ratified by East Midlands Play Association, EMPA, and that was understanding play and play development, and that qualified you at what would be today like an NVQ level 3.
Is that the precursor to NVQ then? Because I remember when I first became aware of Playworks, I remember doing the NVQ as well. And
yeah. So before that was the ABC.
I didn't do mine there, but yeah.
Which was probably better, I think. I think that was a better, but it was more taught, whereas the NVQ suited people who'd been in play work for quite a long time and didn't have a qualification, and in theory all you had to do was build a portfolio and show that you knew what you were doing and why you were doing it, which was great if you did, but if you didn't, you still had to have some taught input, and we did that as well. We started building on NVQ level 3s, yeah.
So there was a journey then for people to kind of access, and so the people that were the volunteers that were being enthused by the play projects and coming on play centres with the children perhaps, or just the ones in their local community, were then able to access the training at Playworks and get skilled up and get a bit more confidence, and I'm sure many of them went on to work in the sector or do similar things as well perhaps. Yeah,
that's true. There's a lot of people became play workers through that route, and we also did training the trainers courses so people could become trainers themselves, so you had like a self-supporting system. So yes, that was really good. And the funding, part of the funding for that used to come from the City Council's Play Scheme grant aid, and part, when the early years service was born, the early years teams were very interested in what we were doing, and they used to give us some money. So eventually the early years paid for the Play for All, because lots of early years staff used to come along to them sessions and then take ideas back into their nurseries and daycare settings, and that meant that we could keep that going, and then the other money that was coming from the city we used to support the build the qualification training.
Because there would have been after school clubs and people like that accessing as well.
Always 100 odd play schemes, and 50 or 60 after school clubs running in churches, community halls, scout huts. It was a really thriving sector, I think, between 80 and so I was here 99, 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
Probably even a bit longer than that. Yeah.
Well, I think we had a city play policy, didn't we, at the time, and that there was almost a national play strategy, and then things changed.
We had the best play service outside of London. London Play was always seen as like the pinnacle. Leeds had a decent play service. Sheffield and Manchester had kind of cooled off a bit by then. And Bath had a really, Bath and Bristol, I think.
I was going to say, Bristol's always been quite vibrant, hasn't it, in terms of the activities and things that they have on. But
I think we were one of the last surviving play services outside London. I think everything else is nearly gone.
Just want to go back to Forest Fields a little bit, because I don't know if you know about this, Dawn, but my understanding is that Forest Fields Play Centre opened in late 1986, and that was as a result of play projects that had taken place at the Hyson Green Flats in the mid-80s.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know much about that and how that kind of came about, to how they found the building? Because I know the building was, well, not the building, the site, should I say, where the hut was put. Do you remember anything about the Hyson Green play project?
The play project at Hyson Green, I can't remember it having an inside. I've only seen pictures of outside play areas
with the big tunnels and the big concrete tunnels, and this is where Asda is now, isn't it? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is, and obviously they were going to knock that down, and a sort of action group was formed. There was a lot of input from the Chief Exec of Wiverton Road Tenants and Residents Association and other local organisations, all within Forest Fields, who didn't want to see that play facility lost. The place on Russell Road where Forest Fields was built used to be a cash and carry,
right? And
I think it was burned down, and then I can't remember how the land was procured. But it was halved, and one half a childcare setting was built, and in the other half Forest Fields Play Centre was built, and the building was always meant to be a temporary building. It was like I can't remember what you call them.
It was sort of pieced together, wasn't it, in large bits? And
like when they built
prefab.
Prefab.
Is that what you call it?
It was a prefabricated building.
Yeah.
We didn't have an office. They made the office out of what had been the toilet in the prefab, and it was just one big playroom, and it was freezing. It was really, really cold, and we worked like that for. So it was officially opened. That site was officially opened in November 1987.
Okay.
So the year before that, it must have been at the flats.
Right.
I don't know. I should imagine that all the history of that is still in the filing cabinets.
Going tomorrow.
Which are because after about sort of 10 or 15 years, the city council bought the house. The house that had the most issues was the house that was completely next door to the play centre and next door to the pulley, and eventually those people moved out, and the city council bought that building, and that became the office for the play centre. And also we did run activities there. In the downstairs we had a craft room and a painting room and a drama room. We used to have our meetings there. We used to do health, like teenage health workshops in the front room, and
there was a kiln there as well, wasn't there?
There was, yeah. There was some really artistic people who became involved in the play centre, so we were able to do some quite level high art stuff, and also the children helped shape and build the garden at the back of the house that had a pond and wildlife areas, and we got Wildlife Trust involved, and but I should imagine all that information is still. I know it's still in those.
I think some of it is, yeah. Hopefully we'll dig it out. We'll be able to dig it out.